North American songwriter, we had the opportunity to talk to Andre Xcellence.
Adam was able to talk to Xcellence over Zoom audio. Andre started rapping and writing at a young age under the name Don C. From Don C to DJ Xcellence to Xcellence, Andre started to release the single a week from 2019 till 2020. Check out his new track, Vote, which is being used for the hashtag #IVoted concert campaign.
And make sure to check out our YouTube channel and Facebook page at Bringing It Backwards and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bringing Back Pod.
We'd appreciate your support if you follow and subscribe to our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're Bringing It Backwards with Xcellence. Hey, Andre, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Yeah, so our podcast is about your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Okay.
Cool. You want to go camera off? That's fine with me. I'll just turn mine off also.
Well, yeah, I did. I look crazy right now. I wasn't dressed for me. Is it being recorded? Should I can?
Oh, it's we can do audio or video. It doesn't matter. So
Okay.
audio is fine. We can do it this way. Yeah, we're recording right, so it's all good.
I'm in my like home clothes, like COVID home space. I didn't get that. I thought it was just audio podcast. I'd have to go put a hat on and look crazy.
Oh no. It is. Sometimes we do video though. It just depends on the artist if they want to or not.
Okay,
on these
dope.
Zoom calls. So it's all good, man. Thank you again for doing this.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. I'm excited.
Cool. Well, first, why don't you tell me where you grew up?
So I grew up in the metropolitan area of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
A lot of traveling, a lot of journey around. Unfortunately, we moved around a lot. My family is from the Caribbean. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from Trinidad and Tobago. I was born in Washington. And we kind of lived there and then moved to, so I don't know if you're familiar with the DC area, the
A
metropolitan.
little bit, yeah. I mean, you're close to like Virginia and all that's all kind of really close in there, right?
Yeah, so they call it the DMV. So it's DC and then Maryland and Virginia are right next to it. So you cross the line, right of all three.
Uh-huh.
So I was born in Washington, D.C. at DC General, and then we lived in D.C. for a bit, and then we moved to like the Virginia area, which is like right outside of D.C., Falls Church, Alexandria, Springfield, and then at some point moved with my mom and family to Maryland, which is across the line, and then back in DC. So we moved a lot around in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I spent most of my time growing up in the metropolitan area.
Right on. And how'd you get into music?
I mean, it's always been the thing I kind of felt like I gravitated towards most. My family being from the islands, there's a lot of influences as well as of like reggae and calypso and soca always playing in my house, as well as first it was 80s, some of the 80s singers, Billy Ocean, for instance, Sade. I remember even not knowing who they were, just the music in general. And when hip hop started to come into prominence, they would play the radio. Something we listened to a lot. If not, the islands are very, how do I say this? That community, the Caribbean community, is very tight knit. So they'll have like a lot of, whether it's in the park and they meet up, or they were big into soccer. So they'd be like weekends, you go and play in the soccer fields, and music would be playing, and you kind of get a melting pot of different music. And it was always, that was what kind of focused in. I know now. Now I know as an adult I have ADD. So when I was a kid, the teachers in school would be like, "Hey, your son's kind of hyper, not focusing on things." And my family being from the islands, there was a stigma of like medication. They wanted to, put me on, try me different things, and my dad was like, "No, not having it."
Right.
So I grew up only having an aptitude and really focusing on things that were of interest to me, because that's what I felt like I could focus on, and music was what I kind of gravitated towards.
Oh wow. Okay.
I tried different things, and it was really an impediment in my life growing up for a while until, as I got older, I worked around it, and then wasn't until I was an adult I got diagnosed with having ADD, and I started getting the right medications, and it was like the light bulb went on, and then looking back, I realized it kept me back on certain things, but helped me in others. So, for instance, I tried to play trumpet. Wasn't working, couldn't focus. I tried French horn, couldn't kind of focus on that. It was just always, I could get into it, but when it took time to like go and practice. I couldn't sit there and spend the hours practicing. So I constantly at school would be great and the attention's there, but then they'd come back and go, did you practice X, Y, and Z? And I couldn't do that because I just couldn't focus. And it was always, and I took that to mean I didn't have an aptitude for the specific instrument. So it wasn't until, I started listening with my older cousins and my mom and family, and then you start hearing like some of the hip hop stuff. It wasn't really until I don't remember where we were, but we were driving somewhere and they were playing Notorious B.I.G. and I'm Biggie. And I remember like listening and we were like one of these little festivals or like weekend things and just seeing everybody like glued to the music. One was amazing. The lyricism was great. And then the response he was getting was just like, I'm like, oh, wow. Right. And then looking at him, if you remember Notorious B.I.G., he was a big black guy with a lazy eye.
Sure.
He had all the women, all the girls, everybody loved what he was doing. And then just like the wordplay, I remember what was the line? He said something about like Navajos creep me into their teepees or something like that. And I'm like, wait, what? And there's a double entendre of Navajos and Navajo. And then I'm like, wait, what? And I'm seeing girls gravitate towards it. I'm like, okay, I want to do that. Whatever that is, I want to do that. Right. And that kind of started the journey towards really gravitating towards hip hop. But I felt like not just Biggie, but because like the island stuff, like the reggae things, like there was Beanie Man and Bounty Killer and some of these island artists, and then going to school and taking music history and learning about rock and different artists and those type of things and liking, and maybe because my parents played so much stuff, like I looked at like Bob Dylan and I'm like, he had like subterranean homesick blues. I'm like, this is dope. This, if I was doing that in that time frame, that's what I would be doing. Or the Beatles and looking at what they're like, how many people love them, whether it was no matter ethnicity or where people just love the music and what it made you feel. And so I kind of like just became a student of that and just trying to frame and learning from there. It was that journey and the different artists. So I always say hip hop's my love. And that's like, I think that's like, it's now become the genre, and, hip hop is kind of pop now and the voice of the world. But I feel like one of the things that makes me strong is I like everything. I listen to a little bit of everything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even in some of your songs, like American Pride, you use the John McClane song, and like you can definitely hear it in your music.
Yeah. Oh my God. That record. I remember I went to Montgomery College for a bit, and I remember listening to that song the first time, and just the power of what he was saying. And he's like, I just wanted to make the people. I embodied it, and I learned over time. Just in general, it might sound silly. I remember there's a psychic I speak to sometimes, a famous one. Her name's Ursula. And when she was telling me about myself a while ago, she's like, you've had a lot of change in your life and you never focus on you personally, but you feel music, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I'd say Mozart. And I love history. She's like, do you know Mozart? Do you remember how they say Mozart could feel music? She's like, you feel music. So be careful of that and what you take in. You notice certain things like you gravitate to and how you feel for things. And as she says that now, I'm now trying to know to a little more be cognizant of that. But I remember when I first heard that record and his lines were like, I just, wanted to make something and make the people dance. And then he talked about one day he saw what's in the news and he had to respond. And it just touched me in that way. And I always wanted to pay homage to him and bring that song to, I would say, the hip hop world or urban world, because I realize unfortunately, a lot of people just get into one type of music and they don't hear everything. So I felt like it didn't get the shine it wanted. So I always wanted to kind of pay homage to him, because his song is like, it's one of those songs that will touch me forever. It's going to play at my wedding. I love that. I love that's an amazing song.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I heard that. I love how you do that with some of these songs, like even the Wu-Tang one about COVID and all that. I love how you're mashing up the genres or not that specific one, but like using some of the elements from other influences and, and changing it up a bit.
Yeah. Like I can make original music all the time. But I feel like sometimes people don't hear some of these classics, and I want to pay homage to it and let those things live on. And sometimes I feel like if you hear, so I want to be tasteful about it. Like I'm definitely clear to like, just that's not my only, I don't mind a one trick pony, you know.
Right,
But
right.
I definitely, when there's certain things that are tasteful, and I feel like I've grown an aptitude of I can hear something and be like, wait a minute, what's that? Thought, whether it's radio, TV, commercial, it could be, you know, a movie. It could be, sometimes it's just it's something, a cartoon, something old, you know, and I just like, wait, what's that? And I can pull, and it's something that stands out to me, and I try to use some of those things here and there. But like some of my old stuff, I did Violent Femmes, Blister in the Sun.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
One of my first EP that we did with a release with Priority Universal with excellent music was this EP called I'm Coming. And it was, I redid that, the Violent Femmes record. And
that's
awesome. Just like, oh my God, that record is like, it's just, that record touched me, just that, the guitar riff, everything. And the song's, mine's called Go Wild.
Okay.
One of my favorite one. And that it's the same indicative with that. I have a single, I think it's on YouTube now. We have a video for it on YouTube now. We're going to re-release it coming up. But I did Hava Nagila, and I have a song called Hava Tequila.
Uh-huh.
The video's out now. It's done well, and we took the song down because I think we're changing distributors and we'll probably reissue it. But the song, just in my journey with religion and learning, and I learned a little bit about the Jewish faith and about bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, and I didn't understand. I didn't know anything, you know.
Yeah.
And just wanted to pay homage, and I was like, wait, what? There's this whole world, and then I heard the song, and immediately I'm like, how Nagila, and the idea came from it, and it built it from there. So it's always wanting to sometimes flip some things, but always, you know, paying respect to it, and it's really not just rating, more so as it's wanting to give shine to these legends or these great works that I want people to hear that they don't hear. So
yeah, I love it. I want to go back a little bit to you're talking about, you know, the love of hip hop and starting with like Notorious B.I.G. and what was the first, like, how did you kind of break into the songwriting, and like what was the first action you took? Like, were you writing lyrics by yourself? Did you try to go to like open mics or anything like that?
Writing lyrics by myself. Like,
okay.
Unfortunately, like I mentioned, I moved around a lot, so I had a little brother, so I had to help with the family. So I didn't do the normal things in school, like, you know, with the free time wise, but I had time to myself. So for me, it was listening to those greats and listening to what they do and breaking that apart and then trying to write it on my own. So I would write and write and write and write. And then I learned, I have a trick, or I kind of learned something in my head where I can listen to a song enough and get the beat in my head. So I don't need to necessarily have it on anymore, where it's playing in my head, and then I can write to it. So I would write to certain things if something, and so I could write to that beat, and I write my own stuff to it. And then sometimes I could recite stuff to that record, and I learned it from there. But it was really just kind of wanting to like learn from those guys and learn the wordplay, the changing of the flows, and then kind of just building on from that. But I was just right.
And when did you produce your first song, or you know, put out your first record?
I have a song or project, my first rap name, and this is when like hip hop was trying to be like all very like gangster and how do I say, but everybody had a love for like the Scarfaces of the world and the Godfather.
Oh, sure.
My first like iteration of rap name was Don C. I thought in my mind I was like going to be Don Corleone. So I had this EP that no one will never see the light of day. and I went in the studio with a team and we did like 3 or 4 songs. And I tried to be this like witty, like rapping version of like, in my mind, I thought one day like Jay-Z was just going to find me and I was, you know, and I was going to be a member of his crew and that type of, yeah. Now I look, it took me, but you know, it's those things that helped me learn the wordplay and learning the rap aspect of it. And then when music changed and hip hop changed and they got out of it being about violence and, you know, drug dealing, and it got into being more about you being yourself, and then the Kanye and you know, and you start to see people who could be in everyday walk of life and still being rap. And then I gradually said, hey, wait a minute, let's just be the best version of Andre, the best version of excellence that I could be, and write about my experience in my life and shed those things. But my initial one, I wanted to be like, I thought I was going to be like the next member. I thought I was going to be Scarface Light. It was hilarious.
Okay. So from there, when did you switch to Excellence, and how did that project begin?
So there was a point where, so me personally, I'm an out proud gay man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't focus on that in my music so much because I like everything and I want to make music for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't feel like I need to do, that's not all of me, that's a part of me.
Sure.
That said, there was a point when I was doing my first EP and projects, I would be hanging in the studio, and hip hop wasn't as accepting as it is now. There was no Lil Nas, people who, just in general, there's a homophobia in certain types of music, but hip hop, it seemed to be very heavy, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to a point where I would go to my studio sessions and it would, and I was a late bloomer. So when I was in school, high school, I dated all the cheerleaders and girls. I was a late bloomer. But when I realized that who I was and became real with myself, I felt like I was living a double life, so to speak. You go to the studio and it's just, and it's a different world. And I took stock of the landscape at the time, and I felt like, okay, you can't. No one's gonna accept that. Or it's gonna be hard to push. If you're gonna be working on if you're gonna go to a label, who's gonna invest in that? Or being real, and then wanting to be real. Like I was always taught, be real, be yourself, be real. So I know I can hide who I am, but then if I do bring it to light, it doesn't seem like it's the right place. And so it got to a point where I put a mental block for a minute and I stopped rapping. And I said, you know what? I'm not gonna do that. I gotta be real. I'm not gonna do it, and I'm not gonna hide. And I stopped rapping. Not really I never stopped. I always did it all the time. It's funny. We were just going through. I just moved to we have our house in Celio in LA where I live, and to my old closet and just cleaning stuff as I watched football the other day, and boxes and boxes of lyrics and pages. I would just write. Even though I quit, I never quit because I loved it so much. But I put the mental block up. And so there was a point where I was living in DC. I went and I started promoting parties in the dance music, house music scene. And I would promote in the metropolitan area. I DJ'd, I promoted. And so I started as Excellence was like in my little group, and we listened to like a lot of progressive house. And, some trance, some tech, but more so house, progressive house type things. And then in the gay house area, like Peter Rawhofer, which is people who know he won the first remix Grammy ever. He was a legendary DJ. Would follow him and follow that sound, the Tunnel and Twilo in New York and house music, very heavy. And I started DJing, and so as Excellence, and I got that name as Excellence, and that was like where that started from. And so I would DJ, and I would go to New York and we were doing turntables and then CDs, and I would go to New York from DC and go to 8-Ball Records and some of the record stores. And I met, and got to a point where like I still now have crates and crates of records and stuff. And I would go there and they'd pull stuff for me. And I still had an eye and an ear for the music and what made people dance. So there's some elements of a house music, dance music stuff in my music, and I'll definitely explore that more in the future. But I saying that to say I had this. I was a good DJ, not great. I was a good DJ, not amazing, because I still didn't have the aptitude to spend the hours of practice. But I could, because I went out all the time and was in this club world and music was my thing, and I learned what people like. I could go pick music like no one else. And so I go and just sift through hundreds of records and I pick the best stuff. So you would come to my parties and I get people booking me because they'd be like, I've never heard this. What the hell is this? Where is this? It'd be white labels, obscure stuff. And people would love it. My transitions might not be the greatest till I got warmed up because I wasn't practicing, but I did DC. I got a residency in Atlanta for a while. And as big as I got it, I spun at Space in Miami for a bit, and it was really that was kind of like my retirement for hip hop for a while, and I just kind of watched the landscape, watch how things grew and progressed, and from the sidelines.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then you finally, what was the moment that made you decide, you know, I'm going to go back into writing music and
I moved.
not just DJing?
I moved to West Coast. Moved to LA.
Okay.
You know, started at some point I failed at DJing. I said to myself, look, Andre, be real with yourself. And DJing has progressed bigger now than I ever thought. But I felt like, okay, this is the internal fight I had. I said, look, I can be one of the biggest DJs in the world, right? And you might not know who I am. Or I could go do a one-hit wonder and be like the guys who did the song like Laffy Taffy or Who Let the Dogs Out, and everybody would know my record forever. And
right.
that used to mess with me. Like I'd be like, okay. And now DJs are producers. There's DJs they are part, you know, they are as integral into the creation process and then they were back then to me, but they weren't, you know, this is before the Steve Aokis and the Calvin Harrises. And
sure.
If I had seen that vision, then it would have been different for me. I might have gone a different path because I could write, whether it's not even just hip hop, pop, I could write for things, but I looked at it as most of the people I was looking at were just spinning other people's records. And so at some point I kind of took a step back from DJing, came out to California. I got like a regular job for a bit, dealing with people. And I felt like it was, you know, I would say it was a job, not a career, because it wasn't a passion. And I felt like I hadn't really accomplished my goal because I couldn't do music, which is the one thing I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I'd say about 5-6 years ago now, one of my best friend in the world, my best friend, Will Winkie, we were going to some little event in San Diego driving. And
oh wow, that's where I'm at.
yeah. We're going to some I don't, it was like a zoo party or something in this fun in July. I love San Diego. You have one of the most beautiful cities ever. We're driving, and if you know that drive between LA and San Diego is perilous.
Yeah.
And he said to me, why don't we do, and this will sound funny, why don't we do our own little rap group, right? And he's like, and people are laughing at me. We're going to call it the FAGs, and it'll be like NWA, but it'll be like bars. And I'm like, what? And he was like, yeah, it'll be just do it for fun. Fuck it. You know, this is YouTube was is getting bigger, and there was ways you can put music out now, and it was changing. Music industry is changing. It went from what I perceived early in my career as you had to go to the major labels to get to take it to the next level, and you had to go to a gatekeeper, which I thought wouldn't have accepted me for who I am. Right, to now people were doing their own more independent grind. You can go on YouTube, you can put your own stuff out there, you can build up more. SoundCloud was becoming a thing. The industry changed. I watched how things were progressing. Right, we were having issues with sales and as well, and piracy and getting free music, having Napster and all that stuff. And the industry was still figuring itself out. Right, really before streaming became big, but still enough that I said, okay, wait a minute, the game had changed. I don't need to go to anybody to do it. If you figure it out yourself. And so he says, let's do this group. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, cool. And he was half joking, I think. He thought it was be for fun. But as I told you, I never stopped writing. To the point where I was living in LA and working in Orange County, and I would commute, carpool, and I would just write all the time. I have notes.
Oh, wow.
All the time. Like, what's the saying, 5,000 hours to master something? I'm probably at 20,000 at that point. And
yeah.
He's like, let's do it. I got back to LA, and it was like it opened. It's like I needed that mental block lifted, right? And we did that weekend. I went and I got back. I immediately like started going around LA, finding producers, finding studios, finding sound. Like I came back to Will maybe a week and a half later. I'm like, look, okay, we have a session in a week. We're going to meet this person and do this. He's like, what? Right? And I'm like, yeah, we got this guy. What are you talking about? Right. And he works, he's very big in the house in DJing, and he actually, talented in and of himself, but he is also a lawyer. So he's like, oh, okay, Andre, I put this thing together, and within like 2.5 weeks, we were working with producers. We were cutting songs. He's like, hold on. Right. And we put together this EP of music. And one of the songs was, we had sampled, and maybe one day I think I might put this out and redo it. I'd sample a clip from a Destiny's Child record, early from the Survivor record. And because again, I would always hear these samples or pieces of songs that stand out to me. And it's a clip from Destiny's Child where Beyonce is going, everybody listening, I want to see, I want you shake, I want to see you dance. I don't think you heard me. I want to see you dance. Get up and dance. Get up and dance. Just clear clip, no art, no music, just the audio. And I took it to the producer. I'm like, I want this. I want you to speed it up. That's when Kanye was doing a lot of stuff with like, with the Diplomats and Cameron, and there was that very chipmunk sound that.
Oh yeah. Okay, I remember that.
I want you to speed that up, pitch it a little bit. I put it to a reggaeton beat, and then we just flipped it. And he's like, "Where'd you get the sample?" I'm like, "Where'd you find it?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I had remembered it from years ago from the Survivor album, and like the thing I wanted to always use." And I made this song, and I got in the booth, and it's like I hadn't been in the booth in years. It was like enough in no rush. I did it in 2 takes, and it was like I think the lyrics were like, she didn't after the Beyonce sample. And I'm like, she didn't say dance. She didn't say dance. Okay, she said dance like the spirit took you, like a heretic in a pressure cooker. I flipped it, killed it. I walked in the booth, and everybody's looking at me like, what? Right? And we did, and the song came out great. We actually did a video for it, got it prepped to go, and I'm like pushing and screaming, and I'm like, okay, let's drop it on YouTube. And my best friend was like, no. I'm like, what? He's like, Andre, I'm a lawyer at this like law firm. I'm hoping you take it to a label and they like sign us or something guaranteeing something before I like leave my career. I can't do that. What if they see it? I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. And it was from that point I said, okay, got it. And I was hurt, but I thank him. And I still to this day, I thank him because he took that mental block away. But at that point, there was no going back, right? I just went solo and started going 100. And then I felt like, oh, wait a minute, you're behind, right? Because you need to catch up. And so then it was like all 100 miles an hour from that point on.
Oh wow! So he didn't want to continue because he was worried that the song would get flagged or you get in trouble for using the Destiny's Child sample.
No, he wasn't worried about that. He thought we'd put it out, we get it together, get a whole project together, and then go pitch it to like Capitol or pitch it to like Universal.
Oh, okay.
Them to go behind it and then sign like the old time record deal, sign us, and then he'd get this advance and he could say, okay, well I can quit this legal job and I can go do that.
Got it.
Like, I don't want to put this out and then my bosses see it or someone else get it on the desk and now I have to add it. And he was working at a conservative like company. He's like, what are they going to think? They hear me rapping under a group called FAG. He's like, I don't, I paid all this money for law school. My parents paid all this money for law school. I can't just drop everything and throw caution to the wind without some kind of guarantee.
Totally. That makes sense. Yeah. He wasn't willing to take the risk.
Yeah. But at the time he didn't tell me that because I wouldn't have gone down that road.
Right.
Yeah. And he told me, he's like, I didn't think it would be, I thought it'd be dope, but I didn't know it would be, that real, but it's dope. It's great. Let's just shop it. Let's do this. And I'm like, look, we have to prove the concept. This is, again, we still aren't, it's still, again, there was no little Nas. There was certain, we moved leaps and bounds in the last 5-6 years, but I was like, well, we need to put it out. Let's get it out. Let's get people on it, put the video out. Let's get the awareness. We had been in that dance music, house music scene. We have people like, and he used to promote parties on the East Coast too. So we had a big problem. Like we have enough following. Like we talk about it now. How do we, through caution to the wind and release that record? It'd be that song and record. It'd be millions and millions of streams. It'd be a whole different arc. I'd already be a household name. He tells me that now because he's no longer at that company. But at the time, he's just like, I can't. My parent, no. And I was destroyed, but I said, okay, cool. You know what? Got it. I'll just go solo. So.
And then from there, so you go solo and then you decide to go as Xcellence.
Yeah. I was going as Andre Xcellence for the most part. I just dropped the Andre from that. And I started sourcing different producers. I went through LA at the time and I went through like 50 people. Like, cause one of my favorites is Jay-Z. Like I love Biggie, and then of course his tragic passing, and then studying all of hip hop, and Jay-Z was probably the closest to him from a lyrics and music rap standpoint, and I love that wordplay, and I watched his career progress because he went from his own indie label and people not believing in him, and then him and his 2 cohorts starting their record label and then getting beat back by Def Jam at the time and they still not believing in him and building it. And at the time, he was the closest thing to Biggie, and Biggie knew it. But his career kind of flourished from that. And so I watched his growth and his development. And so I was like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I want to follow that blueprint, so to speak. So he was working at that point with Kanye and Just Blaze, and he had been doing it and he's dropping classic after classic after classic, but he had his own label. So I said, okay, cool. Went and sourced, found these two great producers, started my first record label, which was called the American Commission. And it was an ode to Biggie and Jay-Z. If you listen to Biggie on Life After Death, he has a song, I think it's What's Beef? And he goes, the Commission. He's like Uncle Paulie, Little Kim, Charlie Baltimore, Iceberg Slim, the Most Shady. And it was him talking about the members of the group, the Commission. Right. And then they never did anything because Biggie died. However, I'm like, okay, I want to start my own little label and call it the Commission as an ode to Biggie. And that's what I started doing.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, yeah. And the first label, didn't know what I was doing, realized I had to learn the music industry. It's a business of music, not just making music. I ended up leaving my job and starting this label with these two producers that I met. They were living in their house, like one room. They were sharing a room together. These two guys from the Midwest, super dope. But I knew they were amazing. Like I knew they were like my Kanye and Just Blaze. And the first time I met them, the first record we made was dope. And we started just kicking records out. We did an EP for my project at the time. They had a connection with, it was promo only, elite promo. And one of the music reps is a guy by the name of Izzy Sanchez. Still one of them for radio and promo around the country is probably one of the biggest names in that industry. And one of the programmers in LA that one of the producers knew sent it to Izzy and then set up a call. And Izzy's like, look, I don't even deal with independents. I'm dealing with, Izzy's like, I do promo for everyone from Lady Gaga to Taylor Swift to Cash Money. He's like, but a programmer that I respect in Los Angeles told me that check this out. And I listen to music, is dope. What do you want to do with it? Flew to New York, met Izzy, and I had saved in from investments and my business partner enough to invest in something with the label. So, and again, I didn't know what I didn't know. Now, if I had the team that I have today, it would have been a different story. So I go and meet this radio guy in New York, and he's listening to my stuff, and he's like, with his team is like, this is dope. He's like, you're kind of a hybrid. You have different influences. He's like, I don't know. We have to figure out what format you fit in. Again, all these things are alien to me. I was just excited that someone was interested, right? We cut it. It was a budget we need to put in for it. I didn't understand at the time if you go to radio for something, and again, now things have changed. You don't necessarily need radio. Everybody wants it, but you can break other ways.
Sure.
And this was when radio was still like what it is. And he's like, look, we cut a sizable check to them, which was probably half my budget. And I didn't realize if something starts to pick up, I got to be able to duplicate that again. So we got some spins on the first Lil E song. And then I wasn't able to pump more money into it. And I learned quick, fast, this is the business of music. Right? But the sound just kind of developed from there. We started to, we ran out of money, but we had a little studio set up in our studio in Hollywood, West Hollywood area. And we started to produce for people as well, right? Because to pay the bills. So we was like, okay, we could produce for artists here and write for them, produce for them, finish it, mix, master, the whole process, and do that half the time, and then work on our artist label projects the other half, right? And so over those years, I kind of honed the sound I produced for different people. So, and I, again, at the time, kind of keeping an eye towards the LGBT community, because I knew people from that community, and from the house music, dance music community, I knew people from that community. One of the things we made good money on it and I cut my teeth on is I produced for some of the LGBT acts. And got to a point where I said, okay, I was looking at, and some of the ones that are more recognizable, one is probably a drag queen artist by the name of Shangela. Is up for an Emmy right now for her show We're Here on HBO. Was on RuPaul's Drag Race multiple seasons. And then and All Stars, and now has a #1 HBO show now called We're Here that she's up for Emmy. Shangela is one of my oldest friends. I produced for Shangela. Oh, Shangela and Willem were both. If you've seen the movie, the Lady Gaga movie that she did, yeah, the two drag queens in the scene,
yeah.
Both those drag queens are that one Shangela, one is Willem.
Oh, okay.
I produced for music. I produced records for them. I produced records for another artist by the name of Manila Luzon. All these girls are like famous in the LGBT world and just in general, actually mainstream now. But they're on RuPaul's Drag Race and touring the world. Like Shangela was the first drag performer to have a main residency in Las Vegas for
wow.
years. Yeah, well, Shangela is amazing. She's one of my best friends. I hope she wins the Emmy this year. She's fantastic.
That would be cool. Yeah.
We produced records for Shangela, records for Willem, records for Courtney Act. Courtney Act is another one who was on Drag Race, and then I think was on Australian Idol, and it was like top one or two on Australian Idol, and then came to Drag Race, and we started producing for the drag queens because I said, look, if we could produce hits for them, mainstream hit records, I wasn't interested in doing campy things, but give them real music, original records that people could sing. Right, I saw where it was going, where the market was going, and so we were producing for those artists. T.S. Madison's another artist, and another artist. We produced her whole EP, and I would write, produce, record for them, and kind of cut my teeth on doing that for quite a while.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. And then, so you're writing with other people, like you said, Shangela, producing, writing, helping them put their records together.
Yeah. Other independent artists up in LA, people would just knew we used to have a studio here where they'd come in and you bring different upcoming artists and we produce for them and write for them and record for them and kind of as well as working on my stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when did you like have you performed or anything live around in LA, or is it mainly just in the studio working? Yeah.
So probably I'd say like 2 years ago, we kind of parted ways with the production team and that record label, and we just kind of everybody's moving different directions, and I got to a point where I wanted to focus on my project a little bit more, and so I stopped. I left. We stopped. We kind of parted ways on that. I had always had Excellent Music, which is like a side project for my stuff and anybody that I had a personal interest in working with, and I started focusing in earnest on my project, and I realized I got away from me because I was being a label head and executive and writing for the people. And I was, it wasn't my partner at the time was like, you spend 20% of the time on your stuff and not other people's. What's going on with that? And so I kind of went back to the lab and I started just really, really focusing on me. And I started working on what would become like the I'm Coming EP and the new stuff. I performed at Avalon here in LA, Beat, the Viper Room, different things, some different smaller venues here and there when I had projects to release, and still just kind of honing the sound of what we were doing for the most part.
Very cool. And tell me a little bit about this, the record you just put out, XX Junkies.
So XX Junkies was, in the let me see where we start. This time last year, I started releasing, I wanted to make a clean slate. So we went from Andre just to Excellence. One, because I felt like it was more, it rolled off the tongue more. Two, because I feel like Andre Xcellence is really known for some of the other people I was writing and producing for. And I wanted to make it known I'm trying to compete with just mainstream music. So we kind of rebranded and started winning Excellence. I started in earnest with that, and I was releasing like a single a week last year. So if you go look at my Spotify and my social media under Excellence, there's maybe 20 something songs. Releasing a single a week up until the new year, and then that's when we started hearing about what COVID and what was going on.
Sure. Okay.
The Wu Flu song that you heard.
Yeah, I love that one.
My team was ahead really early on what was going to happen with COVID-19. We had some intel about late January, February about what was going on, and my team and Sean, my manager, and one of my best friends and manager and business partner, he's like, "You're grounded. You're not flying anywhere. Not going anywhere. This is going to be huge. This is going to be a lot." And we were watching what's going on internationally, right? And I wrote that song because I was like, no one's taking this seriously. This was around the time of like Mardi Gras and
Oh wow. Yeah. So yeah, that was it was starting to get bad and people
yeah,
still weren't listening. Yeah, I remember that.
it was even at the end of January. And I felt like there's something called a Cassandra complex. When you see something cataclysmic coming and you tell people and no one listens, no one believes you. Right.
Mhm.
And we would like pour through international Twitter or some of the things that was coming out of China and seeing with this. And I started like supplies and I'm telling everybody I can, I'm like, this is coming, prepare. And
Mhm.
people are listening. People are traveling. My friends are going to Mardi Gras and Carnival. I'm like, what are you doing? And so
Right.
I wrote that record. I wanted to make something where one, it was danceable, something you listen to and get it, but also could tell you what to expect, what the symptoms are, and get it out. And if there's a video for it out where I'm in a hospital bed and it's
Yeah, I've seen it. That's
yeah.
awesome.
And what I say in that record, if you're this is before, and people are like, well, how did you know? I'm like, because I'm not. I saw it coming. If that record was written and done early February, it says
Wow.
if you were waiting, if you were training for the Olympics, I would stop. If you put money in the stocks, I would take it. Like and now people are like, wait, you wrote that one? I'm like, yeah, and they're like, don't believe me. I'm like, I wrote that record was done in February. What are you talking about? Because I knew. So that and then after that, we got the video done literally the day that Gavin Newsom here in California announced that we were on complete lockdown,
Whoa.
shelter in place. It was like, oh, okay, and it was, and so that was the last thing. And the only thing I probably would have changed, I call it Wu Flu pandemic because
Uh-huh.
I wanted because of the flip of the Wu-Tang song.
Yeah, because you used the
Right.
part of the beat.
Yeah, I made sure I'm not I didn't want to be I don't like any racism discrimination, and I want to make sure this is not a Chinese disease. This is an international problem for the world. So
Mhm.
if you listen to the song, I said I met my friend from UPenn, and
Mhm.
in the video it's a light skinned black girl. It's not Asian. I didn't want that, and so the only thing I might have changed the name because it became political. It's like they're calling it Wu Flu. Some people are like, are you trying to attack Chinese people? Yeah, Chinese people, the culture. I'm like, no, not at all. It was because of the
Mhm.
Wu-Tang flip. And some people I realized didn't get that. Wu-Tang, your music. Some people didn't understand that. They're like, well, are you trying to say it's Chinese? I'm like, no, not at all.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I might have changed on it. I just was trying to be, again, pay an ode to Wu-Tang, which is some people that are legendary to me and that I love.
Mhm.
But I had to take a step back, and I wanted to put out an album around that time, but everything stopped.
Mhm.
And I really went. I was like everybody else. I was depressed. I'm like, I don't know what's going on in my music career. I was just picking up momentum, and then everything stopped. And I had to survey the landscape, and it
Mhm.
wasn't until this summer, and then everything happening with George Floyd, and then that's when I did American Pride, wanting
Mhm.
to do my part to spotlight that tragedy, but being afraid to really go to the protest because I don't want to, because of COVID, and not wanting to,
Right.
so. And like I said, in the song, I was going to drive my Tesla to the protest, a little Model 3. And I did, but I said, what can I do? My voice or making something that resonates would be a better way than going and just my body.
Right.
But
No,
it,
that makes total sense. Yeah, and
but it was,
instead of just being another person there, you're
yeah.
putting something out, and
And,
obviously you have a fan base and people that are ready to hear it, and
chronicling his time and
yeah.
supposed to be just, I was, again, I've been watching COVID. I'm like, to me, it was worrying about spreading it. So it wasn't until around summer, and I record like a record a week. I'm always working constantly. Right. And that's one of the things my team is honing me in on. Like, new projects are one definite sound, one definite focus. If you listen to XX Junkies, that's kind of like cleaning out my closet, so to speak, right? Because those are records over the last year. Um, some of them are motivational. Some of them are a couple of samples, like Bring 'Em Out. The first single was a sample, which is the old I'm Cool Like That, it's a record. Um, some of them are I like to call pussy pop records, or the dance, like Cardi B.
Oh,
Um,
right, sure.
I love to dance. I love to shake. I like to twerk. I like to go have fun. That's my
Mhm.
thing. At my heart, I like to make people dance and have fun, right? and I can talk, I can have that little bit of swag and that little slang, have fun, and not take myself too lightly. But I have records like that, which I know aren't. If Cardi comes out with, she came out with WAP, it's a pop record because it's Cardi B, right?
Right.
I know some of the records I have where I'm saying, or it's I have that old Too Short. Like he's like, bitch, that kind of.
Oh yeah, I love Too Short too. He's one of my favorite.
He's a legend. So I got that from him when he goes, bitch. I take that, and just that very swag. I call it my Rick James flow, my James Brown flow. Like that's what I kind of. If you ever, whenever you start performing, I like to. My performances are out of control. I go over the top, and but I like kind of giving that energy off. But some of those records are, I'd say, I call them those pussy pop, like trap dance records, city girl type. Some of the records are response records, like city girl stuff. Like those aren't. At base, I had to sit down with my team recently, and they're like, "Look, Dre, your bass and you think you like the big pop type stuff. That's again going into some of the classics and more bigger records. We're gonna focus you in and hone you in, and that's what it's like. I have another project I'm working on, hopefully to release by the end of the year or soon. Probably a new single coming out in the next month, and the thought was, okay, if they're going to hone my sound in and be more consistent, and yes, you can do everything, Andre, but for now, as you're building your fan base, let's give them what you do, give them you, and not just everything. So XX Junkies was kind of cleaning out my closet, putting these 14 songs that I feel like all could be singles into one cohesive project, and kind of saying, okay, here's that. And then from now on, going towards things that are more mainstream, I would say pop, but hip hop. So the coin phrase right now is they're calling me a pop rapper, right?
Okay.
Like pop music is popular, but it's also hip hop. So, and I'm fine with that. I get it. I don't need to be, I get with the play to my strengths and what I love. And just taking that lesson of, yes, I know you can do the record talking, the Too Short type record. Yes, I know you can do the City Girls record, but you're confusing your audience, right? And then you want record like my new record and stuff. You want to do records where you're coming off like you're, a Brent Crosby. Where is that? So kind of focusing in on that and the new stuff. So XX Junkies is my ode to that sound.
Got it. Okay. And then you just released another song, like,
so
a week or so ago, right? With the vote, right?
So my team and an amazing publicist I'm working with brought me, one of the opportunities was the I Vote, and I Vote and performing, and so we're doing a performance that'll be shown election night, and they wanted to do a performance.
Oh,
Great.
Cool.
And my team, I'm working with Richie Jackson. Sometimes he's Lady Gaga's creative director. He's also my creative director too. Loves me and has always wanted to be supportive of what I do for years now. And when I sat with him, he's like, "Look, again, trying to focus on my sound." He's like, "Look, I for the I Vote, I wouldn't do one of your big record or do one of the other songs on your album or do He's like, don't so much." He didn't get it. You know what I mean? He's like, do one of the songs on your album. For me, I feel like this election is the biggest election ever, right? I feel like everybody needs to get out and vote. And I love what I Vote's doing, and it's just getting people excited about voting. And so, and again, I do a song a week. So for me, that beat was going to be a record for one of my new projects. I went in and I said, let me do something just to vote. Let me do my just like American Pride. Let me give my contribution to the vote initiative. And so I do. And so that's what that came from. It was just wanting to the song says, I don't care what way you vote, right? And it doesn't matter to me, right? Right now, getting everybody's voice out, and let's whatever side prevails. I mean, everybody. I know I have my thoughts, and everybody else does, and that's irrelevant right now. It's just let's get everybody to voice out, so we can all move together as one nation with what happens at the end. So that's kind of what I put together, and the response to it has been great. They're doing an initiative. The I Vote people loved it. They're going to put some different initiatives and spotlight it and focus it. But that was just me just going in and just cooking something that just, that kind of chronicle what's going on, which is what I love to do.
That's amazing. And you said there's going to be a live element to it?
Yeah. So I Vote, I guess, is going to do it'll be a large, it says it's going to be the largest simulcast performance. So I think everybody who votes they're going to, after you vote, you're going to be given a code, and you can watch a massive simulcast performance nationwide with all types of artists going to be. So you could, I guess, go on and click different artists, and you can see everybody. A lot of artists are turning in performances.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, they're what they're pitching up to do is absolutely amazing. So
that's really cool. And what was can you tell us your concept on your portion of it?
For my so what you mean for my performance, or just
for your performance?
The performance is just me being just be the everyman. So I wanted to do something where I just kind of spotlight, like I strip down. I'm not going to be over the top super rapper, you know, because I want to embody everybody and wanting everybody to in different views of everybody getting out and voting, and just saying this isn't whoever you are, let's all vote. So that's kind of, it's a little mini, like it's going to end up being like a little mini, like, you know, if you watched like Gaga did her VMA performance recently, where she gets up. I like the theater, the aspect of it, the performance. I love to put on a show, so it'll be something like that, where I thought about just doing stand up performance and microphone, but I thought better of it to do something where like I give a little show and a little. The goal is to kind of embody everybody, the everyman, saying everybody needs to get out and vote. Everybody's voice needs to get heard.
That's cool. Yeah, I was wondering if you just did like one of the typical ones where they just sit there and kind of play, or if you wanted to make it like it sounds like you did more of a production performance than that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh no, I did a production performance. If I was going to do one of my other songs, like my stage show is live. Like I bring the noise. I have like I have different people dancing, people flipping. It's crazy. We have I have paper mache heads, Andre head bobbleheads, and I'm like talking to myself. I have ones, all types of stuff. I like things to be fun. So if I had done one of those performances, it'd be over the top. But at the end of the day, I'm like, if we're gonna do something about voting, it's just about wanting everybody to vote.
Definitely. That's really cool. I can't wait to see the video. And thank you so much for talking with me today, Andre. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Thank you. I love what you guys do.
Oh, thank you, man. I love your stuff too. I love what you got going on. And I have one more question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, I would say hang in there. Develop your craft, develop what you're doing. Like, be willing to take constructive criticism and learn, right? Because I'm still learning every day. I had to be told, I come and work with different producers all the time, and I learn what's going on, what the trends are, and be cognizant of what's going on, be cognizant of the changing technologies, always new ways to not only put your music out there, market yourself, and we're still learning, coming into streaming in and of its own, but always keep growing and persevere, because it's going to be points where, everybody, you're going to get discouraged, but don't get discouraged. If you love it, if you truly love it, right? Like I always tell people, one of the biggest things I tell people, find out what you love to do in life, that so much so that you would do it for free, and then figure out how to get paid for it. So if music's your passion and you do it, don't give up, keep persevering, keep pushing, because it gets tough. And I've seen so many people, unfortunately, who love what they do, and they let the politics of the business or the changing of the sounds, or the fact that they don't have the big machine behind them get them discouraged. And then sometimes you just need to just hold on, and it'll figure itself out.